morning. What a beautiful altar on Palm Sunday. Today's reading comes from Rays of the One Light, a weekly commentary on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita by Swami Kriyananda. Today on Palm Sunday, the topic, Who is this Son of Man? Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. On Palm Sunday, the throng joyfully acclaimed Jesus Christ as he entered Jerusalem, casting palm fronds before him, singing, Hosanna, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. The Lord bless the King of Israel. Jesus Christ had told the people, the Son of Man must be lifted up. His reference, so we are told, was to the mode of his impending crucifixion. Some persons on that occasion had asked, who is this Son of Man? Was Jesus a human being merely? Those who on Palm Sunday called him king little realized the actual nature of his kingdom. Yes, he was far more than what they imagined. Of course, he ate, drank, walked, slept, and talked like others. His consciousness, however, was centered in infinity. Yes, again, he laughed like others, but his laughter expressed divine joy, not mere merriment. Again, he wept like them, but never with human grief. The tears he shed were for the sufferings of unenlightened human beings. Never were they shed in self-pity. Jesus Christ was wakeful in God. Most people, by contrast, are asleep spiritually. How strange it is to reflect that less than a week from that entry into Jerusalem, so joyfully acclaimed, he would be arrested, condemned, and crucified. Such is the bitter sweetness of human existence. Smiles of welcome one day, insults, even persecution the next. How few realize that Christ's suffering would not be for himself, but for people's ignorance, for those who had not yet understood the deeper reality that dwelt also in them. Everyone is born, quote, trailing clouds of glory, as the poet Wordsworth put it. Even the meanest beggar has lived a story, or will eventually have lived it, more magnificent than the greatest epic ever written. In the Bhagavad Gita, this dichotomy between, quote, the Son of Man and the inner Son of God is beautifully described. Sri Krishna, representing God in human form, reveals his true nature in infinity. In the 11th chapter of that great scripture, his chief disciple Arjuna exclaims, O infinite light, thy radiance spreading over the universe shines into the very darkest abyss. Thy voice overwhelms the roar of cosmic cataclysms. Lo, the myriad stars are thy diadem. Thy scepter radiates power everywhere. O immortal Brahman, Lord of all, again and again at thy feet of infinity, I lie in prostration before thee. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om.
I just love it when Shane reads. You're just like listening to a radio show. It's just, it's amazing. I could just close my eyes and I can think of when I was growing up listening to, radio shows on. He's just got that voice and doesn't miss a word or an intonation or an inflection. It's just a high bar. Me, on the other hand, we are talking about the crucifixion here, so we'll see how it goes. So In the promise of immortality, which is the deeper, expanded version of the readings that we heard today, Swami Kriyananda writes, Jesus did not come to earth to amaze people with his greatness. His mission was to awaken them to their own potential greatness. All of us are, in our souls, the sons and daughters of God. To the extent that Jesus distinguished between himself and others was to remind them that they are of their divine potential. The duty of the sincere servant of God is not to emphasize his distance from Christ, but to attune himself with Christ as a means of rising above his own shortcomings. So we learn from this fantastic reading that we're not just, the humble sinners of the earth. Yes, we all get to work with our stuff. But if we take the crucifixion to a deeper level, and actually his life really is what we're talking about. When we just focus on the crucifixion, it's kind of a very small aspect of things. I mean, next week, we get the resurrection, right? So there's a lot more going on. And not only that, but before the crucifixion, a lot of fantastic things happened. And Christ knew, as an avatar, as a being coming fully realized to this world to help it, knew what was going to occur and how it was going to occur. And it didn't make it any easier for him because he was also a human in a sense of a physical body, and he was also a spirit in the sense of Christ consciousness. So as we are also humans in our bodies, but when we deeply meditate, when we deeply attune ourselves, when we let go of all the judgments and all of the guilt and everything else, all that is left is a feeling of spirit, which is what we are, in which our world would like us to say, you are not. And that's what we're fighting. There's a fantastic quote in The Proof of Heaven. In it, the author quotes Sir John Eccles, who was a neuroscientist. He says, I maintain that the human mystery is incredibly demeaned by scientific reductionism, with its claim in promissory materialism to account eventually for all the spiritual world in terms of patterns of neuronal activity. This belief must be classed as a superstition. We have to recognize that we are spiritual beings with souls existing in a spiritual world, as well as material beings with bodies and brains existing in a material world. This reality that we're living is a really watered down, diminished reality of our life. And yet, life is difficult. Life has suffering. Life is for education and entertainment, Master says. But it can't feel particularly entertaining if we're not in tune with the Master, with the Guru, with the God, with Spirit. If we don't have any other anchor, any other compass to tell us that there is something more to life than the daily suffering and pain that if we're not having, we see happening throughout the world. Life is a paradox. And it's through these masters that come to us that we are given hope that there is actually something better going on than what we are seeing in the physical realms. And we are trained, we're given the techniques of meditation and many more techniques of how to tune into that sacredness. I was reading a small article recently from, I think it's the Daily Good News. It's something I get every week. And in it, they were talking about just that, about the sacredness of life. That means that there isn't any judgment, there isn't any thoughts going on. There is just being and feeling in the heart what is going on and experiencing that. This you can do brushing your teeth, cooking your food, driving to Sunday service. This, if we only had meditation and we only had Sunday service, what are we going to do with all that other time? Are we just going to complain and gripe and, choose the rabbit hole? Or are we going to choose, it really takes a lot of courage and takes a lot of wisdom, a lot of discipline to be happy, to decide, I am going to be an instrument of the light. If not only for me, but for those around me. I am so blessed. I live in a house full of light. I live in an ashram with 9 other people, because there's 10 of us. And we get together and we function under the assumption that everybody's doing the very best that they can in the moment. And that every day is going to bring us a lesson. And every day we're either going to be the teacher or we're going to be the student or just the observer. And that we have really nothing else to offer each other but love. Love is the answer. And I know that sounds kind of cliche-ish, but the fact of the matter is, it's really true. Love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, all thy mind, all thy soul, and all thy strength, and love thy neighbor as thyself. That is Christ's gift to us. Those 2 simple laws. And how we can use those laws incorporate them into our daily life is what will bring us happiness. So I mentioned that I was reading The Proof of Heaven, and it's a very interesting book because it's written by a neurosurgeon who for 7 days was in a coma. Not just a coma. He was flatline. I mean, he was dead as dead can be. Nothing was showing up on the screen for this guy. And then he wakes up. Well, during those 7 days, he's given a journey. And he gets to see what the reality of life really looks like if we go a little deeper. And because it's written by a physician, you get a lot of information that confirms what he is saying as near truth, as truth. So it's not like, we all have heard of, Mooney wrote some fantastic stuff on near-death experiences. There's been some fantastic writings on near-death experience. Why is that important to us? Well, it does give us a little hope that there is something else going on. And not only that, but these people come back and they are changed. And they're changed for the good. And the rest of their lives are spent bringing this light to us. Well, we have the avatars and we have our guru that bring us the same information. But these are few. When you find out that there's actually thousands of people out there that are having these experiences, it helps to give us, support us in what we are trying to do. I wanted to share with you one of the things that we do every day, 3 times a day at Ananda House is we do the vow of superconscious living. And I think everybody got a copy of that. And if you wish to partake in this vow, the reason we're going to do this vow is all it is it's a vow to live in the light. If you wish to, please stand and say with me this vow. So we'll do it together. On 3. 1, 2, 3. I vow from this day forth to be true to my higher superconscious self, to be a channel of light, of blessing and love to all, to live in joy, not sorrow, in truth, not error, in victory, not failure, to blame no one in adversity but myself, and then, instead of blame, to accept responsibility with God's help for changing myself. Have a seat. If you go on to YouTube right now, the folks, our group in India, just did a fantastic YouTube on this vow. And it's very clicky, very quick shots. It's got, maybe 6 or so different speakers, and it's an action-packed vow of superconscious living. So if you get a chance, go to YouTube, type in vow of superconscious living, and you'll be inspired by this because it gives you that sense of strength and commitment that we don't always see easily. So I think you'll find it quite helpful. There is in our readings today on health, isn't it interesting that the subject, the affirmation's health, and we're talking about the crucifixion. I mean, I thought that was kind of an interesting point, but it says the key to everlasting happiness. Such radiant well-being comes after the mind has been cleared of every shadow of unwillingness, of fear, and of doubt, when one has learned to say yes to life and when one has learned to love. That's where radiant health comes from. Say yes to life and share the love. So what is it that keeps us from sharing that light? For most of us, it's some sort of a fear. There's something that's holding us back. I don't know what it is, but everybody's got them. And we react. We react to, I can't do that. That's just too much. Or I won't do this, or whatever the case is. It really doesn't matter. But whenever there's resistance is futile. It just causes us a lot of pain. When you relax in the faith that, God knows what's going on. God knows that I have X amount of energy. And if she decides to have me do something, I guess, it takes more energy not to do it than it does just to do it. And the interesting thing is you oftentimes have more energy because you haven't used all that energy to block yourself. So the same thing is with anything in life that we have, is that if we are blocking our own energy, then oftentimes we're going to feel tired. We're going to feel anxious. We're going to feel all the things that we don't want to feel. Whereas if we can, what are the tools we can use then to unblock that energy? What can we do? My gosh, we're yogis. I bet you we could do yoga postures. I bet you we could do affirmations. We could do energization exercises. We could just breathe. and relax. And we would, in fact, have more energy. You wouldn't believe how much energy I have now. Yesterday, we had a Save-A-Day, and we had such a great turnout. At the beginning of the Save-A-Day, I think Maury said, well, I think we have maybe, 6 people coming. Well, the total of people we had were 20 people that day. We had 20 people, and we got a lot done. Ananda House is our elder care home, and we really depend on these Save-A-Days because we've got, the previous owner called the garden, it was the garden from hell, because he just had himself. But for us, it's the garden of heaven because we have all of you to help us get ready for springtime and fall and everything else. So we were going to have the day was going to be from 8:30, where you get good coffee and sweets, tasty pastries, okay, all the way to 1 o'clock where we have lunch. And then that was going to be the day. And Mari, the Energizer Bunny here, decides, we have just this one little project, and she says so sweetly, now, I know that we're all done here, and we want to thank you all for coming and for all the hard work that you put in. But if there happens to be anybody who wishes to help me just complete the upper garden, because we have a vegetable garden every year, then I'm going to go out and do the chips that we need to have to finish the garden. Well, many people came out and helped. The last two being Bamal and Joanne, as I understand it right. Lori, Rhonda, Pavani and Bajra. Well, Vajra, we always smile when Vajra comes because he has skills. And I always make sure that there is a project which I would rather somebody more skillful with a saw and hammers and those kinds of things can do. And lo and behold, Vajra showed up. So we have something that is sturdy and we know is not going to collapse. So anyway, they're out there for at least another hour or so doing these chips, and it's 4 to 6 inches of chips, and there's a large area. The area is, I'd say about half the temple, so not a small area, and you're wheelbarrowing this whole thing, and it gets all done, and I'm amazed. She comes back and she's just full of energy. She's just glowing. Well, then she had a shower and relaxed. Okay. But the point being is that when the energy is flowing, when we're not too concerned about it, and we can just enjoy it, it just is a blessing to us all. This is a good plug, too, for Harvest Day, right? Rajasi Day is coming up in 27th of April? April 27th. You're going to get another opportunity to see how you can allow that energy to flow. And I'm sure they'll be telling us about that at our announcements. So not everything is always hunky-dory. Sometimes we find ourselves in challenging times. In those times, in those situations, they're kind of like, I don't know about you, but like I get up in the morning and I do my affirmations. I get myself set for the day. And God darn it, every now and again, almost daily, I get blindsided. Okay? A button, the button pushers are out there. And I get a button that gets pushed, and instead of doing what I'm going to tell you to do here, I'll react, and then of course, then you can deal with your guilt and all that other stuff afterwards. And oh my God, it's much easier if you just learn the technique. Say yes to life. Okay, but this is another very helpful technique. So, do you remember growing up when one of your parents said, "Just take a deep breath"? Just take a deep breath. Well, that is very wise counseling. So, in the practice of being mindful, you learn how to be aware of your physiology. So, like, I'm very aware now that if you touched my fingers right now, you might turn into ice because there's no blood in them right now. Okay, that's a sympathetic response to stress. But I know it. So if you know it, then there's something you can do about it. Flushing of the skin, warming up of the face, tightening in the stomach, maybe the chest, between the shoulder blades. These are all indicators, physiologic indicators that can help us to let us know, oh, I'm getting a signal that something's not exactly right. And if you can endure that signal with a deep breath, take a deep breath, because it only takes a little bit of time to relax, then you can respond to whatever the challenge is in a much more meaningful, fruitful way. This is a very simple technique to learn. So you're saying yes to life, you're taking a deep breath, and when you find these opportunities, which, they're pretty much almost daily, work on the small ones first, okay? And actually work on them by taking that breath, feeling your body, seeing where the stress is, offering it up to the divine, and then see if you need to do anything. Oftentimes you don't need to do anything. It's just like, okay, whatever. So it's a very, very, very good technique. Discipline yourself to that stimulus and response. So there's a gap between the stimulus and your response. Take that time, tolerate it with that breath, and then see what happens. See where you go with it. It'll save you so much embarrassment and and other things, because no good ever comes from anger or reactivity. On that note, from Whispers from Eternity by Paramahansa Yogananda and edited by Swami Kriyananda, on page 83, number 83, demand that through all tests and trials, the love of God may never fade. O Spirit, I care not if all sufferings come to me or all things be taken away from me. I pray only that my love for Thee never fade through my own negligence. May my love for Thee burn brightly forever on the altar of my constant remembrance. And I think we're going to get some more music.
Our next song today is entitled Palm Sunday by Swami Kriyananda.
Sing of Hosanna.